Good evening and welcome to this AZ Votes 2025 special edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Tonight, we feature a debate among the 5 Democratic candidates running in a special election to succeed the late Raul Grijalva, a Democrat who served more than 20 years in Congress representing southern Arizona in District 7. It's a district that covers parts of Tucson, Nogales, Yuma, and Maricopa County. Congressman Grijalva died in March after a battle with lung cancer. We will hear from Republican primary candidates Thursday. Candidates in tonight's Democratic debate will be given 60 seconds to reply to questions with opportunities for rebuttals. And let's introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. Deja Fox is a social media strategist who worked on Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign. Adelita Grijalva, Raul Grijalva's daughter, and a former Pima County supervisor. Patrick Harris, Sr., a retired businessman. Daniel Hernandez, Jr., a former state lawmaker and intern for former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. And Jose Malvido, Jr., an indigenous scholar. Let's get underway with our opening statements, and in alphabetical order we start with Deja Fox.
My name is Deja Fox, and it's no secret that I don't look like the other folks on this stage or in Congress. And that's because I'm not. I was raised by a single mom here in southern Arizona. We relied on Section 8, food stamps, and Medicaid just to get by. I've been homeless. I've worked at a gas station, and if you at home are feeling like politicians just don't get it, I'm here to tell you that they don't. They'll never know what it's like to make hard decisions in the grocery checkout line, or to work full-time and still not make the bills that month, have to choose between bills and back-to-school clothes, to be 16 years old and work to support your family. That's the kind of experience I bring to this race. It's the experience that we share, and it's the kind of urgency that comes with doing everything you can to make life better for yourself and your family. I believe that we need more than a politician. You deserve a fighter.
Thank you very much, and we turn now to Adelita Grijalva.
Hi, buenas tardes. Thank you for your attention to this very important election. My name is Adelita Grijalva. I am the proud granddaughter of a bracero, a hardworking Mexican immigrant, and the daughter of a U.S. congressman, a man who spent his life fighting for justice and equity. That is the promise of America, and that is the legacy that shaped me. And in one generation, that happened because of hard work and public education. I have spent my entire life advocating for those who do not have a voice, and I am very proud of the coalition of people that have gathered to try to help us get to that next level and get to Congress. I am proud of the endorsement of former Representative Gabby Giffords, Senators Mark Kelly, Ruben Gallego, Bernie Sanders, over 8 unions, including the Arizona Education Association, and over 50 elected officials in our communities. I'm looking forward to having this discussion. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Next is Patrick Harris, Sr.
Hi, I'm Patrick Harris. I'm not a career politician. I'm a high school dropout that started at Burger King, faced homelessness, earned my MBA, raised 6 kids, and retired as president and CEO of a nonprofit at the age of 44. I've lived the American dream, but that dream is now out of reach because billionaires hoard trillions of dollars, and that's why I'm coming out of retirement, to fix our economy and save our democracy. I've created a platform, Capitated Capitalism, or as I call it, Cap the Cap. It caps wealth at $1 billion and requires the excess to be reinvested into housing, healthcare, education, jobs, and climate change solutions without raising taxes. It puts trillions of dollars back into the economy where it belongs. When I say I'll fight for you, I will, and I have a plan. I have drafted legislation. Elect me, and I'll take it straight to Congress.
Thank you very much. For our next opening statement, we turn to Daniel Hernandez, Jr.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you to the viewers at home. My name is Daniel Hernandez. I'm the son of a construction worker and a Mexican immigrant. Growing up, my grandmother taught me an important lesson, pon tu granito de arena. The idea that no matter how big or how small, we all had a responsibility to try and make the world a better place by adding in our little grain of sand. I've spent my entire adult life trying to make Southern Arizona a better place for all of us. I have fought as a school board president, as a legislator, and as an advocate, first as a gun violence survivor, trying to reform our gun laws to try and keep our communities safer. Then, as the National Latino Outreach Director of Planned Parenthood, trying to protect abortion rights and fighting against the extremists in Congress, like the ones right now that we have to face in D.C., to make sure that we stand up for Southern Arizona, fight back against MAGA, Republicans, and Donald Trump, and ensure that we do everything we can to make this world a better place. My name is Daniel Hernandez.
All right, thank you very much. And with our last opening statement, Jose Malvido Jr.
Hello, my name is Jose Malvido. I'm Chicano Yueme and Tanatam. I'm a son of a father that was a union organizer out of the copper mines in Ajo, Arizona. And we lived through what was called the Great Strike, the Great Copper Strike of 1983, where we were our families were on strike for 3 years. And before that, we were kicked out of our homes because of eminent domain. And during those early experiences really shaped my wanting to dedicate my life to help people. So since the age of 9, when people were getting kicked out of their homes, me trying to help them, physically help them, that's where I made the decision to help people. So I'm not a politician. I decided to run because I'm fed up with what's going on in Congress, and I'm fed up with politicians continuing to do the same thing. So we need representation that's going to help the people.
All right, thank you very much. Let's get this thing started. Deja, we'll start with you. Congressional District 7. The biggest needs in the district and your top priority from day one.
Yeah, like I said, I was born and raised right here in Tucson in Congressional District 7 by a single mom, and she worked every odd job that you can imagine. She cleaned houses, delivered flowers, worked at a post office. I know what the American dream and good policy could do because it was because of good policy, right? Access to reproductive care, quality public education, that I was able to go on to be the first in my family to go to college. And so for me, protecting social services isn't just a talking point. We know that Donald Trump has put families like mine in his crosshairs. Republicans are attempting to pass bills in the middle of the night that would strip families like mine of their access to health care, would take food off of our tables and line the pockets of billionaires. This isn't just wrong, it is unacceptable. And it's why I'm in this fight, because families like ours have been left out of the halls of power.
Adelita, again, day one, your top priority, the first thing you want to get done.
I think it's really important to understand that when Trump passed this big, beautiful bill that is one of the ugliest bills that has come through that we've seen, it really targeted our most marginalized communities, from seniors, veterans, mothers, children, our indigenous and LGBTQ plus communities. If you're not part of their norm, if you're not following their ideology, then you're part of the problem. And so day one, we have to fight against Trump. We cannot let Trump take away Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, because 347,000 Arizonans and 142,000 children depend on it. That's just one of the big issues that we have to work on.
Patrick, day one, what you going to do?
You may remember me meeting you in a parking lot asking for a signature, or knocking on your door after climbing 3 flights of stairs. What I heard time and time again is the cost of living. Like my colleagues have mentioned, a little too much at the top. And we've seen this happen before, again and again and again. Rome, France, Russia, all crumble. First thing I'm going to do is take the legislation already drafted and introduce capitated capitalism to Congress, to force the billionaires to reinvest in the country that's been so good to them.
Daniel, the biggest needs of this district, and how you plan to address that need on day one.
I've always delivered for Southern Arizona, whether it was as a school board member or as a legislator. And I think right now what I'm hearing on hundreds of doors that I have personally knocked is cost of living is too high. People are feeling the pinch. We need to do everything we can to fight against Trump's tariffs that are going to disproportionately impact this congressional district, whether it's the produce industry in Santa Cruz County or the agriculture industry in Yuma. These are things that are hitting people every single day. I know what it's like to struggle. My dad would wake up every morning and go to work before the sun rose and come back oftentimes after the sun set. Because as a construction worker, he had to do whatever he could to keep food on the table. So for me, the number one priority is reducing cost of living, like I did as a legislator, fighting against tax hikes, making sure that we are also doing everything we can to reduce and create more affordable housing, like I did when I passed the affordable housing tax credit here in the state of Arizona.
Jose, biggest need here in this district, in District 7, and what you plan to do about it?
So the biggest need, I think, for this district and the country is really to get back the power of the executive branch and put it back into the other three. The consolidation of the three branches of power into the executive branch is really what's the bit at root of what's happening right now. So I vow to work with other folks, whether it's Congress or Senate, to really build a coalition in order to take back the power, because all these wonderful programs that people talked about, that goes under that, because stuff that should be coming out of Congress is coming out of the presidency, and that's something we cannot continue to allow.
I want to ask about the economy here real quickly, and this would be kind of a rebuttal because everyone in some way, shape, or form mentioned the economy. Deja, we'll start with you. Prices are still high, okay?
That's right.
I want to ask you how they got there, because critics of the Democratic Party and the Biden administration, they say that there was too much government spending, thus inflation. Do they have a point?
Well, here's what we know. The people in power are disconnected from our families, from the reality of what it means to make hard decisions in the grocery checkout line. I mean, be honest. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have probably never even done their own grocery shopping. We need to take a hard look at the way we govern. You know, it is an endemic problem to our party that people are separated from the people they serve. The job title is representative. And I have sat with small business owners here in Southern Arizona, a brewery most recently in downtown Tucson, who shared with us that they are seeing summers get hotter and longer, the season gets slower, and it gets difficult for them to keep the doors open. And at the very same time, Trump's tariffs are increasing the cost of their cans, of their malt, and their equipment by 30%. They are struggling to even keep their doors open before, but they are considering have to cut employees now, and that will impact our friends, our neighbors, and their ability to work.
Adelita, though, before there were tariffs, there was inflation. Why was there inflation, and what can you in Congress with your fellow Democrats do about it?
I think one of the biggest issues is this flat tax and the corporate tax. We have too many allowances for corporations to not have to pay their fair share. We have billionaires not paying their fair share. I am paying more in taxes than many people who are making 2 or 3 times more than I am. And this cut that is coming with this most recent bill is going to impact our working families more than anyone. I think it's important that we understand that the communities that are being harmed the most by these cuts are the communities that need those services. So when you're looking at a K-12 system and they're talking about dismantling the Department of Public Education, that's going to devastate generations of young people. That my daughter, who just graduated from high school last Thursday, I'm worried about the future for them, because I think it's important for us to make sure that when we're talking about the needs in this community, that we live here and we're part of this community.
But Patrick, when we're talking about the future, it's important to recognize the past and try to realize how we got where we are. How are we here with these prices? What happened, and how do you avoid it again?
History repeats itself. In France, the guillotines came out when the lavish nobles came out and collected too much and ignored the poverty. We're seeing that here in America again. You've got 800 billionaires hoarding more than $6 trillion. That money is sitting idle. We tax income under the 16th Amendment, and that is only taxed when capital circulates. That makes a capital market healthy. It is easy to cut expenses, as any business person will tell you. It's hard to raise revenue. When we introduce the capitated capitalism amendment that I've already written, it will lower our tax rates and increase government reserves so that we can spend on the social programs that are necessary.
The idea of cutting taxes and increasing revenues will certainly be brought up Thursday during the Republican debate. Is that something that Democrats need to take a closer look at?
I think when we're talking about cutting taxes, we need to be focused on cutting taxes for working class families. I think that's the difference between the Democrats' plan and the Republicans' plan, or most of us. The reality is people like Adelita tried to raise taxes just a couple weeks ago, in the city of Tucson. When we are in the height of inflation and people are hurting, the height of being out of touch was trying to raise people's taxes, and it failed 70-30 in Tucson. So what we have is a problem where out of touch politicians who spent almost 2 decades in office forget what it's like to be able to buy groceries at the grocery store and know what it's like to have to put something back, or forget what it's like to live on a fixed income, like my mom and dad who are on Social Security. So for me, I think the biggest problem is we have people that are out of touch and are trying to raise the most regressive form of taxation, like Adelita.
Respond, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that it's important to note that when you have flat taxes at the state legislature, when they are not making those who need to pay their fair share, the cost sharing comes back to cities and counties, like the city of Tucson and like Pima County. In the last 2 years, Pima County has had to absorb over $50 million in expenses that the state used to pay for and now come back to us. So the needs continue, but the revenues decrease. And that was one of the solutions that the city of Tucson came up with. But I think it's important that when we're talking about being connected, that you understand the requirements that we have and the responsibilities that we have in government need to also be shared by our federal and state partners.
But you're still trying to raise people's taxes in the height of inflation when people are hurting right now. And you are one of the spokespeople for that. And I think that's the thing. When we're talking about being out of touch, that is a height of being out of touch. Yes, the revenues are down. We could look at our spending. When I have a budget, I have to make a decision. Do I put this back because I can't afford it?
Right.
That's not what the city of Tucson was doing.
Please let her respond.
And I think one of the things that we did in Pima County is we made spearheaded investments in affordable housing, put $5 million a year, and that $11 million total that has been spent thus far has generated $422 million in investment in Pima County in affordable housing,
You still
which
try
is
to
a
raise
program,
people's
respectfully,
taxes.
sir.
Please let her
One of the problems in being out of touch is making sure that when you're talking about being a progressive candidate, respectfully, you are no progressive. You're one of the second most conservative Democrats, according to Progress Arizona. I think that when we're talking about siding with and fighting for our ideals and values as a Democrat, you voted 45 times with Republicans against Democrats.
I want to get the others involved here, but I need for you to respond to that.
Yeah. You know, my opponent's record is so bad that she has to keep distorting mine. The reality is, when people were hurting, she tried to raise taxes. I fought to stand up for abortion rights. I fought to stand up for gun safety. And I fought to make sure that Southern Arizona was a better place for all of us.
Jose, I want to get back to you. We'll get back.
I do need to rebut, because I
Very
think that
quickly,
when
please.
you say that you're there for abortion rights, but then you don't show up for the 15-week abortion ban, respectfully, you need to show up. I've been in elected office, as you mentioned, for 22 years, and I have missed 3 meetings. 3. I have 3 children. So I think that it's important that when we're talking about that, that's where I've been. I can't say that my colleague here shares that same dedication to his
respond,
public
Ted.
service.
Okay.
I'm actually going to hop in because
Yeah,
I'm sitting
please.
here with
I
two
want to get your response.
career
What do you think about what you're hearing?
politicians. That's right. I sit here with 2 career politicians. I know power from the other side of the dais. In fact, I got my start a decade ago. Though I'm young, 25, at 15 years old, while my mom was navigating a rehabilitation process because of her issues with substance abuse, I was navigating life on my own. In fact, I was navigating a sex education curriculum last updated in the 80s that didn't mention consent, was medically inaccurate, and that school board members, including Adelita Grijalva, had decades to fix. And yet it took a young person like me, an advocate, an activist, an organizer, showing up, telling vulnerable stories I never should have had to share in a room full of adults to see a change. And when we look at the mess in D.C. from Republicans who have thrown rules out the window and Democrats who have failed to stand up, we require activists.
Jose, I got to get you involved.
Yeah, it's a little, it's a little,
I know, Daniel.
no, it's a
Jose's
little
got to
rude.
get involved.
You guys are like hogging up all the time, and that's kind of like the whole thing about politicians, you know? You kind of give an inch and they take a mile. I mean, to get back to the question, a lot of what happened in terms of economics had to do with the pandemic. There was a lot of spending that took place to try to help people out during the pandemic. Then when Trump came in, to try to continue to give tax breaks to the billionaires, that just made it worse. So my thing is to go in there, again, build coalitions in order to take back the Congress, in order to tax the rich, have them pay their fair share, so we can support all these programs that we need, including help for teachers to supplement teachers' incomes in rural communities like mine, where we have to hire people from other countries because the pay rate is so low. It's been failing for our communities, and especially in the small towns that are outside of Tucson, that are outside of the just this where the concentration of power is.
Patrick, last word on this. I've heard tax the rich on a number of occasions. I think you had $1 billion was your
I do hope that we can get to tariffs and protecting democracy.
Okay.
So-
Real quickly though.
Yeah.
Taxing the rich. $1 billion means you're rich, correct? That's the way your
$1 billion,
capitalism works.
you can afford multiple mansions and multiple jets and multiple yachts and eat caviar and drink champagne 3 meals a day, every day, and still not spend enough. 800 billionaires hold over $6 trillion. If they each keep $1 billion and you cap the wealth, they're forced to reinvest into society. And they get to choose how to invest. That puts trillions of dollars every year circulating to raise revenues and lower middle-class taxes so that we don't have to go through the same thing that we've experienced growing up.
Okay. Next question regards the tax and spending bill that the Republicans are working on right now. Deja, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on this? Expanding large tax cuts partially to offset with cuts to Medicaid and food benefits, other programs. Your thoughts on what's going on right now on Capitol Hill?
I mean, Donald Trump has made a circus of our political system. He's been running for president for the last decade, since I was 15 years old. I wish I could say that this surprises me, this spending bill, the ways that it prioritizes billionaires lining their pockets while stealing health care from people in our communities, families like mine that rely on it. My mom got a skin cancer diagnosis this year, and because of access, because of Medicaid, was able to get the care she deserved. And we are not in medical debt because of it. I got my care at Planned Parenthood. They're attempting to defund those very same centers when I had no money, no parents, and no insurance. And I've gone toe-to-toe with Republicans here in Arizona, Jeff Flake included, in their efforts to strip that funding from young people like me. I am no stranger to going toe-to-toe with MAGA Republicans in D.C., here in Arizona. And as I look at this political situation, I know that that's the kind of experience we need.
Adelaide, to the tax and spending bill, Republicans say that these kinds of tax cuts, these kinds of spending cuts will spur growth. Valid point?
No, not at all. I think that one of the things that they're out of touch with is the average American and what our plight is. And when you're looking at these communities that have continued to be hit with these cuts, our veterans, our seniors, our mothers, I mean, those mothers with small children, our LGBTQ communities, our indigenous communities, not just in health, but we're talking environment, we're talking library services and access to arts and music. Those are the things that are dismantling our democracy, and Trump is causing that sort of disruption and chaos repeatedly. And I will say, I have been in elected office for 22 years. 20 of those years, I was a volunteer school board member. And we would be in a much better position in our public schools and our K-12 system if we were able to rely on the state and the federal government to help support our education of our children in our public schools.
Daniel, how would you address what's going on in Washington right now if you were in Congress?
Budgets are moral documents, and this latest package that the Republicans and Donald Trump have put forth is saying that people like me don't matter. People like my mom, people like my dad. When I was 17 years old, I almost died because I didn't have access to health care. And if it hadn't been for the state Medicaid program and the Kids Care program, I wouldn't be here today. So these programs that are being cut and slashed, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security potentially, are going to put the most vulnerable people in this district at risk. People like me, people like my family. So when we're talking about what's happening in Congress, we have to remember it's not just about policy, it's about people. People like us who need a fighter who's gonna stand up and understand the importance of doing this. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's personal. Whether it's fighting for you or for your families, I will always stand up to protect Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security.
Jose, those in Congress, and it is the majority in Congress, so that we're not talking about a faction here. This is the majority in the House of Representatives. They're saying that this will create jobs, it'll raise wages, it'll cut the U.S. fiscal imbalance. That's why they're doing this. Are they wrong?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not that they're out of touch, it's deliberate. But at the same time, why are all these people in power? It's because people are also fed up with the way the Democratic Party has been. The cookie cutter approach to creating new politicians to go to Congress, people aren't happy with the Democratic Party either. Right now, the polls say that the Democratic Party is very low. And so we need to reconnect with the working class families. That's why I'm here. That's why other folks that are here, we're here to reconnect with the working class families that have been lost because people take big money from corporations, politicians, and when it comes to representing the voters, it's like, who do I serve? The politicians? I'm sorry, the money or the people?
All right, Patrick, give me some thoughts. Without capitalism, one thing. What's happening on Capitol Hill right now is a whole different ballgame. How do you see it?
I'm a former healthcare executive, and a lot of people go bankrupt from healthcare bills. I've seen it firsthand. Again, what they're doing, and I agree with my colleagues here, they're operating under a philosophy of trickle-down economics, which has proven to fail. I'm going to bring it back, Ted.
Please.
Decapitated
You go right
capitalism. Go ahead and take your tax cuts and add more billions. Once we enact this into legislation, it will be circulating back in the economy.
Adelita, I want to go back to this, what we heard Jose mentioned, that the Democratic Party is in trouble, in some ways is in trouble because it's lost the working class, it's lost touch with Latinos, it's lost touch with blacks, and MAGA Republicans seem to have made grounds. Certainly did in the last election. Why did that happen, and what do you plan to do about it?
I think a lot of people are incredibly frustrated with both parties. If you look at the town halls in very bright red districts, their constituents are also upset and angry because they don't feel like the people that are in Congress representing them are actually standing up for them. What they're doing is they're too preoccupied with getting reelected and being a politician and less about being a public servant. So I think ensuring that we have a strong voice that knows the issues, is comfortable with making tough decisions, and standing up for our environment and our people is critical. And when you're talking about the kinds of things that are happening in our community, when we have, Hudbay doing fundraisers because he's supporting of the mine that is going to destroy the scenic Santa Ritas, that is, Mr. Hernandez is doing that. And so I think it's important to call it out where it is. I've made the commitment to not take PACs from oil and fuel and fossil fuels. And I think that we all should make that same commitment.
Respond, please.
Yeah, I think this is the problem with people like Adelita. She's out of touch. What I'm doing is supporting good union jobs. That's why I've gotten the most amount of union endorsements in this race. She, just a few days ago, not about Hudbay, but at a different project completely outside of the district, said it's just a couple jobs. But when people are struggling to make ends meet, people like my father, a construction worker, to work every single day to put food on the table, just a couple jobs is a problem. So the problem with the Democratic Party, getting back to your question,
Yes.
Ted, is we have out-of-touch politicians who care more about special interests than about creating jobs for people, good union jobs, all over Arizona.
Deja, what happened in the last election cycle, and why did Democrats falter so much?
Well, you missed a key constituency that we are also losing, and that's young people. We've seen young people go to apathy and to the other side, and it has everything to do with our inability to speak directly to them. 39% of adults under 30 here in the US get their news on TikTok, and yet I have been belittled by people on this stage for my presence on the platform, the ways that I have gone into the social media and new media spaces to talk to the future of our party, to the young people who will build this party in the days after Donald Trump. There are better days ahead of us, but I ask you, what party will my generation inherit? I am a version of that newer and younger leader that we should be investing in, that every establishment politician says they want, and yet we see people putting their thumb on the scale in this race, leaning on legacy last names and big corporate dollars.
All right,
It
Jose.
should be for the people.
I agree with that. I mean, I commend Deja for running as a young person, but Deja shouldn't be here having to clean up our mess, the mess our generation and the generation before us created. We have lost a lot of touch. Not we, but me, but politicians. I mean, just the back and forth that's going over there right now. I mean, it's big money, even with our politicians, even here in Arizona, the big money that is gonna, it's like, how do you balance having a lot of money in terms of major donors and then the constituency? You have, like, that's a big problem. The money in politics is one of the big problems with this.
Patrick, is that what happened to Democrats? Is that what's happening to Democrats? I mean, we're seeing studies all over the place that they're losing what used to be a base.
Oh, yeah, they are. I agree with my colleagues. I'm going to try to be tactful here. The Democratic Party doesn't have a platform. They're not unifying people. Everyone is gunning for their own special personal interest. They need a platform to stand on, and it needs to represent their constituents. Look at the number of voting age individuals that voted during the 2024 election. Less than half. That's not what America voted for. I propose introducing a new bill that would make voting day a national holiday. And whoever you vote for, don't care who, you get a tax credit. That'll do two things. People show up to vote, and they'll file their taxes. And that way we can hear from the people.
I want to get back. I think we had some mining issues over here. And Adelita, we'll start with you. A couple of mining projects that I was made aware of here recently in this district. What do you make of those projects?
I think that we have to be really mindful that what we're looking at is an 1800s mining law that needs to be reformed. All of the ore that everyone says is so critical for our communities, for our technology, is actually getting sent out. For 4 years, all of the royalties go away. And then they come back, and we're actually purchasing the ore that was dug out of our communities. And what's left in the aftermath is an environmental destruction. And so when I stand with Apache Stronghold and defending Oak Flat, I'm proud to do that, because that is a piece of property that is sacred to the San Apache tribe, and it is something that should not have been considered in a rider that's a 2014 rider. Those are the things that are important. And also, my family grew up in TCE Plume. We're a Superfund site, so it is very personal to me.
How about you, as far as these mining projects in CD7? I mean, a couple of them here, I understand what the
like
Copper
the one
World,
she's
the
opposing
South-
outside the district. I think that's the thing. Right now, Democrats are out of touch with working class Americans. That's one of the reasons why we've lost elections, because politicians are not listening. When people are struggling to make ends meet, they need someone who will stand up to make sure that we have good wages, protections for their families, and make sure that they have a job to be able to go to. You can't say that you support workers if you don't support the work. And that's the thing. It's not just about one mining project. It's about things like the I-11, it's about Hudbay, it's about South 32, and even the Apache program up here in Superior. So I stand with workers and make sure that I support their ability to put food on the table for them and for their families.
So you support these projects?
Yes.
Okay. Do you support these projects?
No, not all of them.
Deja, do you support these projects?
No, and here's what we need to talk about is when we talk about the environment, when we talk about climate change, I all too often hear people say it is to protect for future generations. And I sit here on this stage, a member of the future generation that our elected officials were tasked with protecting. And yet every year we see summers get hotter here in Arizona, get longer because of the inaction of older generations. Climate change is not theoretical to my generation. We will have to live through your plans for 2050 and beyond. We need bold, progressive action on climate change right here in CD7 and all across the country. And that means protecting sacred sites for cultural groups here and our landscapes, our public lands, and our future environment. You know, I'll close with saying this, that we have every opportunity in this election to elect the first woman of my generation, Gen Z, to make history. And that's not just about a number. It is a unique perspective, a kind of urgency that we bring to this work because it is not theoretical to us.
Okay. These mining projects, environmental justice in general, how do you see it, Jose?
I'm against the mines. I mean, out of the folks here, I'm the one that could speak to this. I grew up in a mining town. I grew up in a copper mining town where sacred sites were reduced into a giant mine pit. We had, yes, it put food on the table, but at what costs? The environmental justice issues there. My hometown's a super fun site. We have cancer cluster, we have asthma cluster because of the mine. So it shut down, but the effects are going to continue living there. So I'm against all of them. And in terms of Apache Stronghold, all the indigenous communities, I've been doing this work for over 30 years, working with indigenous communities all over.
Patrick, mining in your district, do you support it? Do you support the two projects that we're talking about here?
No.
Why?
Okay, it creates jobs. Sure. It destroys the environment. Absolutely. But where does the profit go? Those are short-term jobs. That profit is being siphoned out of the district. No. There are good paying jobs that can be brought into the district. Trump says, bring manufacturing back. Prove it.
I want you to respond to that, Dan, because you're the only one on the forum here that seems to support these projects.
You can both have good environmental laws and good jobs, and I think that's the thing. That's where so many of the folks that are in our labor unions are at the forefront of making sure that we are having more sustainable mining, more sustainable technology. So I think that's the thing. You can't have one without the other. You can't just say we're going to have jobs or the environment. You have to be able to have both. And when we're talking about these projects, it's going to provide good paying jobs right now for people who are hurting in this community. And I think that's the thing. You can do both. And what we need to do is strengthen our environmental laws and then hold people accountable who break those laws and make sure we're doing everything we can to protect the environment. But we also cannot forget the people who are starving and who are out of housing because they don't have a job right now.
Adelita?
There's no clean mining. There's no clean mining. There's no such thing as that. That just has to be put up there. Trump says the same thing about coal. There's no such thing as clean mining at all.
Adelita?
I think it's important that when you're looking at the mines and who's bringing those jobs, how many of those jobs are staying local? How many of the promises that are being made to these communities, like Superior, how many of those people are actually working in those communities? And I think that when you look deeply into what the consequences are, the environmental cleanup that is left for these communities to deal with, it's important for us to look at that. And respectfully, many of these mines are going to be going to automation. Some are already doing that now. And so this idea that we have to balance jobs with energy efficiency, we have a plan with the Green New Deal. We should do that.
A question here regarding the late Congressman Grijalva. Deja, we'll start with you. Do Democrats, and this is a Democratic primary, special election here, do Democrats in this district want to see another Raul Grijalva or a different person in office?
Thanks for that question. We have to start by saying that Raul Grijalva was a real progressive icon. I mean, he was the first member to invite me into his office at 16 years old when I went viral for standing up to Jeff Flake. Overnight, my life was turned upside down. I'd gone toe-to-toe with my Republican senator, demanded answers to why he would defund Planned Parenthood, and I woke up the next day, 17 million people had seen the exchange. And the first member to invite me into their office was Raul Grijalva. But let's be clear. The legacy he leaves is ours to carry on, but this seat doesn't belong to any one person or one family. It belongs to the people and families like mine, working families. Single moms have been left out of the halls of power, and we have an opportunity in this moment, in the next 49 days, to bring that perspective into D.C.
Jose, does District 7, the Democrats in District 7, do they want to see a vocal progressive in line with the Raul Grijalva or something different?
I think that there's been a seismic shift with politics and the government, and I think we need to respond accordingly. So whether or not it's somebody like Grijalva or not, I think it's really responding to what's happening now. I mean, Raul, I knew him as well. He was part of the civil rights movement, which also made him very progressive. I mean, that's part of the legacy that I feel that I've been part of through the UFW, through other work like the United Farm Workers and other work that I've done. But I think that we need to respond accordingly, because it's not about being another Raul Grijalva, it's really about rising to the needs of what the people need now.
What do we think, Pat? I mean, do you need in District 7, do the Democrats in general and the population as a whole, do they want to see that progressive lion return to Capitol Hill?
I think the answer is yes. Now, in fairness, I'm not in the head of 800,000 voters in the district. But when I was out speaking to people, collecting signatures, I did speak to thousands. And the truth of the matter is, I've heard a lot of the family politics of how close Southern politics has been. There was a lot of great stories I heard about the late congressman, and some brought tears to me. But if I had to extrapolate, I would assume that the district is ready for a change.
All right, Adelita, you have a special relationship to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. I mean, are you going to go there and be another Grijalva, or are you going to do things a little differently?
I am a Grijalva. So yes, I'm going to be a Grijalva. But the kind of Congress that I would be walking into is very different than the one my dad did. And one of the reasons why my father could be an unapologetic progressive is because the values of Southern Arizona are progressive. So I don't think you can be too progressive when you're in the right side of history. And so this is an election that is not handed to anyone. We are all fighting for every opportunity to speak to voters, and that is the reason why I'm here. This is not a legacy, it's a movement that my dad was a part of, and I want to continue that movement of being unapologetically progressive, fighting for Medicaid for all, for the Green New Deal, for environmental justice for all. These are progressive values that Southern Arizona believes in, and I believe in it because I'm part of this community.
Daniel, does Southern Arizona, this district, believe in progressive politics to the extent that they saw from Congressman Grijalva for 20 years?
Ted, we are in a crisis as a country. The moment that we are in needs bold leadership that is going to fight back against Donald Trump. I'm a gay Latino who got elected at 21 to a school board, fought corruption and nepotism. At 26, I got elected to the legislature and founded the LGBTQ caucus. I'm Donald Trump's worst nightmare. I'm the kind of person who's going to stand up for abortion rights. I almost died in 2016 when I was working at Planned Parenthood, fighting to stop Donald Trump from being president. Why? Because I was flying all over the country and I got a blood clot, which caused me to miss some votes. But it was because I'm willing to put my life on the line to stand up for what I believe in, whether that was fighting for abortion rights, fighting for the LGBTQ community, or fighting for gun safety. These are the things that I think are important right now. Someone who's going to fight and deliver real results for Southern Arizona, and I think that's what the people in Southern Arizona need and deserve.
All right, real quickly here, well, not so quickly. Deja, we'll start with you.
Sure.
I think you have been on record as saying that the Democrats right now in office, politicians, leadership, not fighting back hard enough against Donald Trump. Explain, please.
That's right. I mean, I don't have to explain to the folks at home. They know it. They feel it. They tell us every day when we knock the doors, and you're right, we've knocked thousands. And every time, the conversations I hear, especially from our older voters, the ones who have fought for the things that we are seeing overturned, I think about Roe versus Wade. I've held women in their 60s and 70s and 80s who have cried, telling me that they feel they've let our generation, my generation, down. I'm a part of a generation of women who has less rights than our mothers. And as we talk to folks in the district, we know that they want the assurance that there is a new generation of leaders ready to take on the fight, ready to take up the torch. And I've been doing it for the last decade, whether that was fighting for better sex education in Southern Arizona's school districts, or going toe-to-toe with Republicans like Jeff Flake over their attempts to defund Planned Parenthood centers here in Arizona, or being arrested on Capitol Hill after the overturn of Roe versus Wade.
Patrick, are Democrats fighting back hard enough against Donald Trump?
No, they don't know how to fight. They don't have a strategy. So Trump is hitting all of us in the wallet. And with respect, I think I'm Trump's worst nightmare. Because when he has to get hit in the wallet by billions of dollars and invest it back into society, that's going to hurt. We need to cap the cap.
So capping the cap is your idea of fighting back hard?
Yeah, introduce legislation and force the billionaires to reinvest trillions back into the American people.
Jose, when Democrats say that their own party doesn't fight back hard enough against the president, do they have a point?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lack of courage to address issues. For example, how many politicians are going to say that they're against the genocide in Palestine? How many politicians are going to speak to that and other issues related to that? I mean, the issue is there's money in politics, so that's why people don't speak out against it. I mean, we need to have the courage to really address the issues and not worry about the big money people that also fund the Democratic campaigns. A lot of Democrats, career politicians, all they want to do is get elected. So they're not going to really address the issues and have the courage to fight in the way we need them to fight, especially now.
The fight against Donald Trump from a Democratic perspective, and the Democratic perspective is it's not a fight that's being waged hard enough. They got a point?
They do. I believe that we need to be much more vocal, bring the stories of our communities to the halls of Congress, and we have to remember who we're fighting for. It's not just fighting. It's understanding who we're fighting for and taking those stories with us and being a touchstone for other representatives to remind them that why they are there is to represent the people. It is not to get reelected. And when you do that, it is very freeing, I think, and I think based on my father's record, that's what he did too. We have to fight, but fight with purpose and fight with a goal. And if you look at how close that bill passed, it was just one vote. And we have an opportunity in this election, and we have an opportunity in the midterm to create some balance in Congress that will require us to work together.
If you get that balance, though, Daniel, will you fight hard enough for what Democrats in Congressional District 7 seem to think is not happening? I mean, they just say it's not happening.
I think the biggest frustration that I'm hearing each and every single day when I'm talking to voters in CD7 is not only that Democrats aren't fighting back hard enough, it's that we're not delivering results. I think that's the thing that people are frustrated. They've been electing people for decades, and they're feeling like they're not delivering results for them. You elect people time and time again, and yet they come back every 2 years and they say, we weren't able to do that because that other person was in charge, but elect us and we'll do it again next time. People are tired of empty promises. What I did when I was in the school board was I broke a corrupt system. I recalled 2 of my fellow board members, started cleaning up a district. And then when I was in the legislature, I fought hard to expand protections for the victims of sexual assault, pass more funding for our education system, pass new laws to make our communities safer. So when we're talking about this, I think what Democrats need to do is actually deliver results and not just complain and say that things are broken.
All right, we've got enough time, I think, for 1 minute response from each of you, okay? So Patrick, we'll start with you. And it's this very simple question. Why you and why not them?
Because I have a plan. I've already written the language, and I'll introduce it to Congress on day 1. That's it.
Fair enough. Jose, why you and not them?
Because I'm the best candidate here because of my experience, my will to fight, my not being connected to big money, my wanting to just help the people. That's why. But I think that it's really important to ask the question of the other folks what their stance is if they support the genocide in Palestine.
Deja, I'm going to ask you why you and not them.
Thank you for your question and raising that issue. It is the issue that has politicized so many young people in my generation who deserve to have their First Amendment rights protected in college campuses like the one here in CD7. And I'd like to start my response now after addressing that. The question, why not me, is the question I had to ask. It's the question we should all be asking when there's a 34-count convicted felon in the White House, when billionaires are playing politician, right? We need to be asking why not us. And there are structural barriers. I'm telling you, it is an uphill fight to be in this race, to be 25, young and working class, a woman, a first-generation American. It is not easy to be in this race. I didn't inherit a donor list. I don't have a legacy last name or big money behind me. I have you. And so I'm asking folks, are we going to do things differently? And that is the question you have to answer with your vote in 2025.
Okay, Daniel, you and not them.
Yeah. I'm 35 years old. I've never had anything handed to me. I've had to work hard each and every single day to get things that I deserve. One of the things that I promised to the folks in CD7 is that I will always fight for them. I am somebody who has dedicated my adult life for giving a voice for those who don't have one. After the Tucson shooting, I started working on gun violence prevention, enabling other survivors to be able to tell their stories. As an advocate at Planned Parenthood, I helped pass better laws on protecting abortion rights and sex education all over this country. And then as a legislator, I fought to actually deliver real results for working families across Southern Arizona. So it's because I know how to get stuff done, I know how to deliver results, and I know how to make sure that we take care of the people in this district.
You got to make time for Adelita here, please.
Thank you. I have worked very hard my entire life to bring coalitions together, to work together, to try to come up with plans that we can all be proud of. And so when I was on the Board of Supervisors, I brought together a group of 50 people representing every community, every union, to talk about what the pillars should be and what should we be focusing on. And that is the same plan I have for trying to get this district that is so vast and diverse united. And so I have a plan on how we're going to work together, touchstone every single community in our district, and work towards a better economy for all of us.
We got to stop it right there. Candidates, thank you so much. Time now for closing statements. And going in alphabetical order, we start with Deja Fox.
Thank you all for your time today. My name is Deja Fox, and I'm here today because I had to answer a hard question. Are the people in D.C. the people I trust to stand between Donald Trump and my mother's access to health care? Are these politicians who you trust to stand between MAGA Republicans and your grandmother's Social Security check? Do you trust them to stand between these Republicans and your daughter's ability to make choices about her body and her future? It is the question we have to ask ourselves here in Arizona's 7th Congressional District in this special election. It is the first referendum on 2024. Did we learn our lessons? And who will we be as a party and a country in 2026? And I pray that the answer is newer, better, stronger, that we will elect a fighter. So I'm asking you to get in our corner. Visit us at dejafox.com to learn more about our story, our policies, and join us.
Thank you very much. And now the closing statement from Adelita Grijalva.
Thank you so much for your time and attention. Muchas gracias. Gracias por su atención. Y my name is Adelita Grijalva. When you grow up Grijalva, you learn how to fight. But it's not about fighting. It's about who you're fighting for. My name literally means guerrera, warrior. And my parents named me that. I think they had an idea of what was coming. It's important that when I go to Congress, I'm going to remember your voice. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to demand that Trump not destroy our economy and our democracy, fight for Social Security, fight for working families, fight for Medicare, Medicaid, and for every community that is being targeted and villainized right now. I know how to fight and win because I learned from the best. Please check us out at adelitaforcongress.com. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And for our next closing statement, we go to Patrick Harris, Sr.
Thanks, Ted. I respect everyone on this stage. But the truth of the matter is, I'm the only one with an economic plan to fund our shared priorities. Cap the Cap is more than just a slogan. It's drafted legislation ready to be introduced. It puts trillions of dollars back into our economy, lowers taxes, and invests in the people who build this country. I'm not here for rhetoric. I have a real plan, and I'll fight for you in Congress. Vote for the candidate with vision and a plan. Vote Harris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Closing statement now from Daniel Hernandez, Jr.
Thank you so much for watching us this evening. My name is Daniel Hernandez. I'm running for Congress for people like my mom and dad, people who worked hard each and every single day to put food on the table. If I'm lucky enough to have your vote in Congress, I will always stand up and I will always fight for you. That's why I'm proud to be endorsed by the most unions in this race, because of the work that I've done to protect our workers, to make sure that they have a livable wage, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect our seniors. Right now, we are in a crisis, and what we need is someone who is battle-tested, who knows how to fight against MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump and actually win and deliver results. I did that as a legislator, I did that as a school board member, and I know that if I'm lucky to have your vote, I will do that as your next member of Congress. Please visit us at daniel4arizona.org to learn more about where I stand on the issues and to join our movement to make sure that we take the fight to Donald Trump and beat back these MAGA extremists.
Thank you. And our final closing statement now, we turn to Jose Malvito Jr.
Thank you very much. I think that it's really easy to talk about Donald Trump. That's a given. But what we need in Congress is a long-term vision to transform the Democratic Party in order to take back the Congress. Not just to win it back, to lose it again, this back and forth. We need to transform the Democratic Party. So part of this is proposing a higher minimum wage, Medicare for all, and really supporting the people in that way. Affordable housing, all these different issues that people need. But again, it's not just about the low-hanging fruit, which is Donald Trump. Anybody could talk about Trump. But it's really about transforming the Democratic Party for the long term, because we have lost it and we need to get it back.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, candidates, and thank you for watching tonight's debate. Our next Arizona Horizon debate will be this Thursday, May 29th, as we hear from the 3 Republican candidates running to succeed Raul Grijalva. That's Thursday, 5 p.m. right here on Arizona Horizon. And you can watch all of our shows streamed live on azpbs.org or on our YouTube channel at AZPBS Now. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
I love working at Arizona PBS for many reasons.
The people. I'm fortunate to work with some really talented individuals.
I was shocked, like I was going to work for the place that produced Sesame Street.
I love that we have such a strong community impact.
Because I get to tell the stories of Arizona.
Really, there's no job more fulfilling than using your skills and talents and abilities to enrich your communities.
The creativity and the passion of my colleagues.
It's just a great place and I love being here.